Hello and welcome everyone to yet another thought-provoking episode of Let's Talk podcast. I'm your host Saurabh Gupta, and today I have a privilege of hosting a phenomenal guest, Sonia Ahuja. Recently, Sonia becomes the fastest female and came overall third in the Badwater Ultra Marathon, which is known as the toughest foot race on earth. Well, just a starting. Last year, she came first in Miami 100-mile ultra marathon, demonstrating her tremendous grit and endurance. So, just to give you a perspective, Badwater ultra marathon is grueling 135 miles, which is around 217 kilometers, starting 200 feet below the sea level in California's Death Valley. And people who are in the United States know what kind of temperature and what kind of climatic conditions we have in the Death Valley. It ends around the elevation of around 8,000 feet at Mount Whitney. Now, the people again who have some perspective of the elevation gain, their impact on you, your physical being, your mental being, totally understand that this is definitely not for faint-hearted. So as we unwrap Sonia's journey, it remarkably illustrates a profound principle found in Bhagavad Gita, an ancient Indian scripture, which says, Karmane vadukaraste ma phaleshu kadachana, which translates that you have a right to perform your prescribed duties, but you're not entitled to the fruits of your actions. Now, if you're still wondering, she started beginning with walks alongside her father. Sonia's journey led the highest echelons of the running world, which embodies this age-old wisdom all along the way. Her focus was never solely on the victory, but her passion for running, her commitment for the training, and a continuous striving to push her boundaries. But at the same time, juggling demands, or I would say juggling demanding roles of being a senior executive, a mother, and a wife, Sonia never lost the sight of her running, allowing it to guide her actions and her decisions. Obviously, the path wasn't easy. Sonia's focus was on a process rather than the outcome, which lead her to achieve something extraordinary. And that underlines the wisdom of Gita's philosophy that when we focus on our duties and get some joy in the process and remain unattached with the outcome, we are capable of reaching incredible heights. So please join me welcoming Sonia Ahuja, a true embodiment of this wisdom and inspiring figure who pushed the limits of the human potential. Sonia, it's a privilege.
Hey, Saurabh, thank you so much for having me here and allowing me this opportunity to speak with you and rest of the audience. And thanks for all the kind words. Really appreciate it.
Well, you deserve that. The more I learn about these things and being a runner by myself, I can totally understand what I would say the impact and what you have achieved so far. So let's try to understand where you are coming from, because there are a lot of assumptions. In these cases, people might be like, oh, she might be born talented or she must be an elite runner throughout her life. And it's not, yeah, definitely it's commendable, but definitely there must be something behind it at the starting. So, if you help us walk through your journey of running, or maybe before that, what influenced your background, and anything you would like to share to give some perspective to our viewers and listeners?
Sure. Yeah. First of all, I would say I'm absolutely not a born runner. I actually didn't run until very late in my life. But I do think that there's some bit of maybe upbringing that might have influenced some of my endurance. But you don't realize that, I'm sure there are people with hidden talent that you don't realize and they don't surface out until later in the life. So I think my story begins with I grew up in India, Gurgaon, close to New Delhi, and my parents, both my parents were teachers. And my very first recollection of anything close to running is just merely like walking during our summer vacation. We used to go for summer vacation because they used to get 2 months off, and we always liked to get out of New Delhi. It used to be really really hot, and we'll just go different places. And I just remember that we would my parents were very against like getting a taxi or going to places in a vehicle, and they would just walk a lot. And I think part of that maybe they were trying to save money. And I think at that point walking for several kilometers just to get dinner didn't sound very appealing to me, to be honest, as a kid. But looking back, obviously I'm so glad that we did that. And I think that's kind of what I remember. Never ran as a child. There was just not enough time. So much. I mean, being in a teacher's family, the entire focus was getting the best grades. And also, I didn't remember that we had so much facilities and resources for women, especially in India during that time. So yeah, I think that was kind of my upbringing. I moved to United States in 1999. I came here as a consultant. Again, very busy job, trying to establish myself. So didn't run in the very first few years. In fact, believe me or not, I was 35 pounds heavier. So a lot of my initial focus was just staying physically fit and somehow, maintaining my weight and reducing that. But as I grew up and got more into taking high responsibilities at my workplace, got my MBA, started to really take some senior level positions, that's when I realized that I needed some kind of outlet to manage kind of the anxiety I was going through, and also to stay physically fit. And just running was the easiest thing to do. All you had to do was put on shoes and get out of your house. So I think I found a very easy path, which was running. And slowly and gradually, I started to fall in love with running.
That's amazing. So as you mentioned that walking is something which was pretty much ingrained since childhood. So I'm curious, what's your, I'm not sure if your parents are here. I mean, what's their perspective about what you're doing right now? Are they fully supported or they still do not understand this?
Oh no, they are. I would say I was blessed to be raised in a family where, first of all, they always taught me that women can do anything that a man can, and I live by that philosophy every single day in whatever I do. There is no difference in gender. There's no difference in where you're brought up. They always kind of wanted me to shoot for the best, and that value was very much imparted by how I was brought up. They are a big supporter of mine, and one of those parents who would want me to do tougher things. So and I think hopefully they believe in me as well. And they themselves are very active. My dad and my mom, both at this age, they're retired now. They travel places and they still walk a lot. Every day they walk a few kilometers, go for yoga, come back, again walk a lot. So it runs in my family, at least walking part.
That's amazing. Actually, one thing is causing this technical thing. Just want to make sure before I go ahead. It says that your browser doesn't allow recording. So just
Oh,
want to make sure that if you have multiple tabs open, sometimes it happens because of that. So, anyways, while we are looking into that, so yeah, I think you mentioned that a lot of those mindsets, those habits comes through your family as well. Obviously, there are different outliers as well, but in your case, as you mentioned that walking is one of the thing, do your best effort, and there's no discrimination between the genders or otherwise. It's just always like reach to your full potential. I think that is something which really help you out. So when you started running in the longer form, right? People run, right? They always feel good for the fitness. They run like a couple of miles or kilometers. and that's it. But these half marathon, full marathon, how exactly that turned out to be?
Yeah, my initial few years, honestly, I just ran, as I said, more just as an outlet. I felt really good after I would run. So it became sort of like very addictive to me. I remember there are days if I skip running, I would not feel as energized. So I started to kind of correlate, how I felt throughout the day to whether I ran or not. So that first of all gave me a reason to be very consistent. So I think more than the distance, I always believe that consistency is the key, and no matter what you do. So I was very disciplined about getting my run in, regardless of how busy I was. And then I think slowly what happened was, I started develop probably more endurance because of how consistent I was running. Sometimes I would run twice a day because I just love that feeling. And a lot of my friends, especially a couple of them who had run marathons, started to observe me. And suggested that I should go for a marathon. I honestly thought they were crazy, and I would say, who would run 26.2 miles? That just sounds not a very appealing idea to me.
Of course.
But then when we moved to California, which was I believe somewhere around 2009. I mean, the weather here was so nice, and everyone around me was running or surfing or biking. So I thought I needed to try running a marathon. So I ran my first marathon in San Diego, rock and roll. And I did amazingly well, better than what I thought or everyone else thought. But the feeling I remember was after finishing marathon, obviously I'm like in air, like super happy, super excited to finish something like that. But I didn't feel tired. Like it was my first marathon, and I felt like, wow, I thought this would be much more challenging. But after I finished, I was hanging out in downtown, had lunch with my friends, and was really active throughout the day. And then everyone around me was a bit surprised to see how I felt. And that just gave me a reason to try a few more. I thought maybe I'll try another one, difficult one this time, and see if that would exhaust me. And the more I ran marathons, the more I realized that actually instead of feeling fatigued or tired, it was just making me this, giving me this immense energy and positivity that I just love that feeling. So anyway, that's kind of start to impart a new idea in my head, which is like, what happens if I go longer? Like, I wanted to see like what human body limitations are, and I that curiosity in mind led me to then sign up for my next ultra marathon.
Well, okay. So that also reminds my first marathon. So as you're saying that you were roaming around in the downtown and having a good chat with everyone, I was literally crying out of pain. So definitely, I can empathize with those people who had their first marathon not so great, but obviously that itself is a great memory about achieving something for the first time. Because again, I think that is something which is always a revelation that when you achieve something for the first time, which you never believed that
Yeah.
you would ever do it in the future, that's a priceless moment. Because after that, whatever you achieve may have the impact, but that freshness and the first time, the essence of that or the smell of that success is totally different. So, coming back to that, you mentioned that you were talking about you were people encourage you for the marathon and you start running. Can you help us walk through like what kind of satisfaction, fulfillment, or what kind of those feelings are when you run? Because sometimes the first timer specifically, because I would like to also cater for those people who are contemplating running for a longer distance and they might think that they could,
Yeah.
but they are not enjoying the initial phase because initially is always an uphill battle. Like not everyone enjoys the pain and fatigue. What's your journey looks like in the initial days around that time period?
Wow, yeah, that's a great question. And honestly, my journey is not very different than what you just described as many runners go through.
Yeah.
I remember, In fact, I remember having some severe back issues when I was training for my first marathon. And that was, we were moving and I was lifting some heavy boxes, and I suddenly kind of, had some kind of pull or some issues
Oh,
that
okay.
resulted in back pain. And I had to continue my training during that time. So I remember I would run 1 mile. I still recall that road in San Diego where I just run 1 mile, and I would be in pain, terrible pain. And I would go back and then, take a painkiller, sometimes get back to the same route again to get another mile or so, or sometimes say next day I'm gonna double the distance, but I'll start with a painkiller. But those, I think the initial hurdle to me was going from like miles to like 5 mile or 5 to 10 miles. I think those are definitely painful because your body's getting used to it, you're getting used to it. But what I started noticing was that once I finished, I would feel absolutely great, right? And I think, I'm sure anyone who's run has noticed, like, my mind was initially, it will give me a reason to not go further, right? You will
Hmm.
say, oh, my back is hurting, I should just take a U-turn and go back home, and just, this is a time to stop because I might hurt my body. So I would have all these, my inner voices telling me one side of that, stop, it's too much, you shouldn't do it. But then I think I had the other side, which was maybe more spiritual and maybe a little bit more fearless and bold, saying, if others can do it, why can't you? Like, so to me, I always live by philosophy, as I said, I feel you can do anything, nothing is impossible. And that part of my personality was challenging myself to say, others have done it, they're no different. So you should be able to do it. So you had to really just use that as a motivation to overcome the pain. And I continued going longer distance. And yeah, I think once you start doing that or get over that hump, I would then, when I started running more than 10 miles or get through that initial period, I would be just in heaven. It felt like there was no issues in life. You were just happiest person ever. It's like almost like meditation, right? It takes some time and concentration, but once you're in that zone, it's so it's a different feeling. It's something I can't express. And once I made that connection to what it could be, yeah, there was no looking back, honestly. Even till date, like, there are reasons. Saturday long run, I'm always get up with saying, oh, my body is hurting, I don't think I should run today. And then once I get out, you get over 3 or 5 miles, it's like you just
Oh,
don't remember.
good.
There's no pain, honestly, after that.
I think there's so many things you're touched upon, and I would like to kind of paraphrase, if I can, to the
Sure.
best of my ability. So, as you mentioned, that it's all about, first of all, mindset. So, and it's good to know that you did have your fair share of pain, and those things, as you mentioned, that you had a back problem, and running and back problems. I mean, these are some of the deadly combos, what we say, because with pain, it's very difficult to run, and back is one of the critical part in that. However, what you mentioned about passing that initial hump, which is every person has their own threshold. And once you pass that, then your mind and body will try to connect better. As you mentioned, that maybe for some people it may be 2 miles, 1 mile, 5 miles. After that, you start feeling better, and you said that towards the end you are on the top of the world in terms of the meditation. I mean, this is something a lot of people say. It feels like meditation. Some people say that we don't know what meditation is, but if I'm more in present, not talking, thinking, or having those anxieties about the future, or having some kind of a contemplation around what happened in the past. So I'm in the present, and that is the meditation for me. And that's what actually I would like to pinpoint, that irrespective whatever the journey you are in, every morning when I try to run as well, I see everyone either sleeping or it's still not dawn. And I was like, maybe just what if I skip today and then I'll do maybe a couple of miles more later. So this is constant battle
Yeah.
which your mind plays, and I think that is the time your habits and your discipline comes into the picture, where you say, no, okay, that's fine. If I'm feeling terrible today, so instead of 5, maybe I'll do 3. And once you reach 3, you say, I think I can do 5. And then the end results is you have completed 5 miles which you didn't envision. So that's a great say what you mentioned about it. So let's move on to that. Okay, so you got into the marathons, you start running, and then you try to push your limits and ultra marathons. So can you help us walk through how that happens and what was your initial outcomes in your ultra marathons?
Sure, yeah. As I said, what pushed me to do longer distance was, first of all, I love running. I had started to feel it was my addiction. But then secondly, I wanted to really see what human body limitations are. So I think my first idea of was to sign I signed up for 50 mile, I believe, in 2018. And that was just to see like how double marathon almost would make me feel like towards the end. And I was still envisioning that next day I won't be able to walk, or I would be crawling to my hotel room where I stayed. And I was mentally very prepared to be completely trashed after 50 miler. And I remember as I got into the course, first of all, it was really beautiful course, Avalon 50 miler here in Southern California. And I just remember having it was like a party with all, especially the food they serve at the aid station in ultra marathon. It's like
Yeah.
I thought this was a party for me. I was enjoying the views. I was running, chit chatting with people, eating lots of food. I mean, they even serve burgers, believe me or not, and I had them while running.
Wow.
And we hit the finish line. I was I don't know if I would say I was tired. Obviously, I had pushed my body to do longer distance than I've ever done, so I felt that. But it was still a very like positive feeling for me when I finished. I had a cold beer, when I finished. My friends were there to welcome me. My husband was waiting for me. My daughter. So I just remember having just an absolutely phenomenal time. And next day, honestly, I was able to still go for a walk with my family since we were at a different place and just sightseeing. So all in all, I would say it felt like a vacation and a party to me, which really then led me to say, okay, this is not as tough as I thought, so why not do more? So I think that's when I
That's
started to start thinking about doing more ultras. In fact, I also think that at that point, because there are less people in ultras, and because most of the ultras are in places that are very scenic or in trails, I also felt that this allowed me to have much more of that spiritual kind of meditation type of experience than a lot of busy marathons are. So I really like that part and almost got hooked to it immediately.
awesome. That's great. So in this all the explanation, I have one question around that, because as you keep on testing your limits, it comes with a baggage of the other side of the fence. I would say that your work, your family, the support. A lot of people sometimes say that they do not get the adequate support. Some people are fortunate to get it, but at the same time, what you are sacrificing, they have the equal share of sacrifice, because when you are out, things still need to be done. And so I would like to know a bit about your family, your husband, your daughter, how exactly they adjust to this. And if you would like to kind of give some perspective about the people who are pursuing these, now you're in the professional side of the house, how that works out in the household conversations and day-to-day chores and activities.
Yeah, that's a great question. I have to say that I couldn't do it if it wasn't for my family, my husband especially, who supports me. I think the way it works out with me is, first of all, he knows that if I don't run, I'm gonna be cranky throughout the day. So nobody wants to be around cranky wife. So I
Yes.
think I think that helps. I also believe that we always as a family believe that although we might like different things. He has his own things that he like. I have my own. We kind of respect each other differences or likings. So that kind of fundamental principle, I think, helped me in my running. And then when it came to really the pragmatic part of how do you balance things out, right? I would say again, it wasn't easy. I still recall getting up really early. Sometimes I would get up like crazy times, like 3:30, 4 o'clock, hit the trail or road 4:30 in the morning, because I had to be back either for a business meeting. My work starts sometimes at around 7 a.m. because most of my clients are in East Coast, and so it was challenging to get a long run done or distance run, still catering to the business. And even on the weekends, like when my daughter was young, when I started running longer distance, I remember I just didn't like the feeling of coming home and they're already having breakfast, or not joining them for those kind of family moments. So I would go really early in the morning and be back home before she even wakes up, so she never knew that I had already gotten like 13 miles before she would see me. So sometimes you have to do things, but I think tying it to like my values, I'm a very self accountable person, I would say. And I always believed in this sort of what I call it no excuse philosophy. For me, if I had said I have to get certain number of miles, I would, if I don't get in the morning, I would go during lunchtime, break it into two runs, or sometimes go a little bit later in the evening again. But I think I always believe that, one, because I loved it so much, and secondly, if I put my mind to it, kind of, I'm the kind of person who would say I have to do it no matter what. So I think, yeah, once you establish goals, for me, there was no excuse, but I did had to manage around certain constraints or things. And work-life balance was constantly an issue, but I would say all in all, I feel very supported from my family.
Yes, and I think this is one of the great example of showing that if you have a commitment and a grit towards a certain things, and if you convey that successfully to your family members, and this is not only family, it's like human behavior. When you explain why what you're doing and what you're passionate about, and communicate to the people in a compelling way, they understand that definitely there's a purpose, because most of the people, I would say, on planet Earth do not have a purpose in their life, because they either try to go with what the social norms is, and they try to fit into that. And that's why they always see other people and they say few things like, oh, maybe this is natural to you, or maybe you're lucky, and then try to get away from that. And this is one of the example, is not like, okay, luck may have, but that is only a part of it. So you have to make that 100%. You really have to work hard. And as you say, work life balance, I would also say that work life integration, because this is not one time affair. As I can see that you have to do this continuously, so you have to make sure that everyone is on board on that. And at the same time, when the time comes, you can take some right decisions. And I would also try to emphasize for the people who are listening or viewing here is that we always make excuses that when we have time, then we're going to do that. Oh, okay. I think today, this week is pretty busy week for me for the work. I'll run all these miles on Saturdays and Sundays, which never comes. So one example you mentioned is whenever you get time, just go out, even if it's 2 miles, even at 1 mile. Again, this is running a conversation, but whatever you physical activity, just do it, even if you have 15 minutes. That's what I learned from other people. Whatever time you have, take it. It has a compounding impact overall in your training. It has a compounding impact overall in your mindset. Now you have your own success metrics. It's not about book that there's a great person who achieved something. You said, I'm doing also something which I never envisioned. So that's a great way of showing that how you can have this work-life integration and try to keep excelling. So move on to the other parts. So you went through ultra marathons. You did that the 50 milers and everything started working. how exactly the Miami, or maybe in between, if you have some other 100 milers came into the picture.
Yeah, I think the idea of 100 miler was always there in my mind, but I just like you're saying the time to increase the mileage was my constraint, or my initial at least concern. But I started doing some research on what would it look like to go from 50 miles to 100,
Mhm.
and I learned a couple of things. One was, it wasn't and I don't want to undermine 100 miles, by the way, that's not my purpose, but I would say the plan to do 100 mile to me looked not very different from the training plan for 50 miler, except that you had to get, instead of one long runs right now, you needed to get two long runs Saturday, Sunday, or sometimes back to back, like 25 each, or something like that, like two marathons back to back. And uh, and and when I looked at the weekdays, although the mileage I needed to increase a little bit, but it was pretty manageable. So I think for me, that gave me confidence that if I'm able to pull like two long runs on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday each, get up early, or stay late, but I do whatever, I can at least try to do what a 100 miler training typically would require. But then also what happened was, COVID hit, as you recall, in 2019. That's when I was actually training 400 miles. So that gave me that eliminated some of the travel I was doing. I used to travel a lot for my business. And when the whole travel stopped, I suddenly found that getting those extra hours was relatively more doable for me. So I started to get more mileage. But again, I was intrigued very much to see at what point mileage become a limitation for me. And honestly, I till date feels the limitation for me was time. So with COVID, as I gained more time, I started to increase my mileage, and I was very surprised at how my body was adapting. Like it will feel tired maybe after two long runs first time, but a week after or the weekend after, it started to really feel strong and good. So it became almost like a norm. So that's when I started to I think 2009 19 is the year, or 18, when I ran my first 100 mile. Again, finished very strong, came second woman overall, and that was my first 100, which I just went with the mindset. My purpose is to really enjoy, not think about my pace. If I have to walk, I'll walk. But I just remember having so much fun. Beautiful course again. Lots of food. Talked to a lot of people, made some new friends. And when I finished, it was almost a feeling is like, oh my gosh, like I could have continued to go. Like it was, I was having so much fun on the course. And I remember those moments, and that's what always then pushes me to do more. And so yeah, that was my first 100 miler. Coming to Miami, so that wasn't planned until last year. What happened was I did Mount Whitney hike with a few close friends, including our own hiking group, and then I had signed up for a marathon a day after that Whitney. So we did a 1 day Whitney up and down, which was obviously exhausting
Yes, it is.
experience. And I enjoyed it because I love the mountains. I came back, drove back to home, and then ran, the marathon next day. And I was able to still finish the marathon at a very decent. I think I had some kind of reward in my age category. I don't remember, but that resulted in a lot of discussion about Badwater. When people saw that, it's like, hey, you should consider Badwater. And then I didn't know at the time what Badwater even meant, other than I just knew this was one crazy race which was unachievable. That was kind of my loose perception of what Badwater is. But when people started talking to me and said, look at Badwater, I got very curious, researched Badwater is, and just fell in love with the idea of that extreme race. You are talking about elevation gain, you're talking about distance. The entire race is on asphalt, which is can be really difficult on your body.
difficult.
And then the
So
heat factor, the
yes,
biggest thing, the heat
so
factor.
I would like to respectively interrupt you because I would like to kind of stress upon that important thing which you mentioned. Mount Whitney hike is not just another hike or a trek. It's like one of the highest, I would say, the mountain, right? Highest mountain in the lower 48 states in the US. So you did that, and at the top of that, you also at the very next day you did your marathons. That's amazing. First of all, just to see that, because there are a lot of people who do a day hike and then maybe just spend a night, because that is so grueling. And I did that as well. I totally understand. In one day, for us, it's gonna. I think it took 20 hours or something because we were out of water and all at particular points. So that's an amazing feat. And you mentioned that before we get into the bad water, I would like to also ask about, as you keep on escalating in terms of, or I would say, getting into more and more miles, these running races. What about your back pain? We touched upon that. You did have back pain. I assume by this time, either you have mitigated that or it has reduced it. Would you like to throw some light on your back pain, how you exactly remove that, or anything associated with that?
Yeah, first of all, I have to say the whole idea of Whitney with marathon was just a poor planning on my part. It wasn't by design. I completely ended up committing to both events, and then
Yeah,
only 2 days before the events, I realized, oops, I made a mistake. Like there's a marathon and there is a hiking. It's like, which one do I pick? And I
yeah,
didn't want to give up any of those ones, so I decided, hey, I'm gonna try to squeeze both of in and see what happens. And actually, I'm glad I did that. So it was a purely an error on my part. But I'm glad I made that error. Coming to the back pain, that is, I will tell you, this is something I would never forget, right? Because when I ran into this back pain issue, actually, it didn't go very easily in the beginning. I had to go to many doctors. I got checked up, MRIs to X-rays. And I still remember many of even doctors, forget about friends who were saying, oh my gosh, you have a pain, you should stop running. Even physicians at the time had mentioned to me that running is probably going to be difficult for me, and I should look at either biking or going like swimming, something low impact. And I'm not here to give anyone medical advice, or say don't hear medical advice. That's not the point. But I do remember that I would always remember when I finished runs, I just felt great, almost so great that I would forget the pain, right? Or not remember that I was going through pain. So I didn't accept that I should stop running because of pain. I somehow challenged that even advice coming from physicians, and said, what if I continue? At what point, am I able to overcome the pain? And you will not believe that this is like a magic. Once I did my first marathon, I I don't remember getting back pain after that. And I think what happened was, to make it more scientific, I had to incorporate a bit of yoga and Pilates and some of the core exercises to continue more running, because I was doing a lot of research in how to run better. And a lot of people talk to me about making sure you have a strong core, you do some, strength training and yoga. So I started to incorporate that as part of my training plan, and I think that might have really resulted in my resolution of my back pain. But after my first marathon, contrary to what people thought, or I thought that this will get can get worse, I mean, the back pain completely went away. And it was that day, which is like 2000, no, I don't even remember, it's been 10 years, 9 years at least. To date, I still haven't had any back issues ever again. So yeah, I'm a big believer now in overcoming those obstacles as you face, as opposed to giving up and kind of being a victim of any health issues.
yeah, yeah. That's so great. I think at the same time, obviously, as Sonia mentioned, that it's not like you have to really go against the advice. You have to listen to your body as well. But again,
Right.
it depends on the human. And that's where your self reflection and thinking about your body, what you would like to do, and all those things, talking to yourself comes into the picture, because the more you understand yourself, the more, I would say, the more good decisions you going to take for yourself. If you just keep on listening what other people are saying without knowing what how do you feel, what's
That's
your track record is, it becomes more and more challenging, and then you just go by whatever the advice you get from anywhere else and just try to do that. So that's a great point you mentioned, that the core strength is equally important. And from what you mentioned, it seems that you did running, but you did a lot of core strength as well to ensure that all the other parts of the body supports your running for these many miles out there. So let's get back to the Badwater. So you get to the Badwater, and again, because this is the toughest race, can you just give some perspective to the people how you did that? And again, about the process, as we mentioned, that obviously you finished and finished with a style. What would the process looks like? And I think there's a team associated with that as well. So anything you would like to share up to the running day?
Yeah, before I get into Badwater, I think I'm gonna give a little bit of kind of how did I qualify? As I was
Sure.
sharing before, when I researched a Badwater and called the race director Chris Kosman, I learned that this was one of the toughest race in the world. Qualifying or getting entry into that can take years. And that to me was very intriguing about the race. It's like, wow, that must mean that there are some very strong people who are running this race. And I had this desire to run this one because I wanted to learn from these other strong athletes, what they do, and kind of be around them, to just incorporate some of things that I observed from them and learn. Secondly, I also noticed that not many Asian women or Indian women have ever completed this race, because you can see the whole roster. There are not many people who have completed this race since the inception. It's like 100 people are invited every year. It's like the success rate is 80% roughly. So it's like you add on, it's still a very limited number of people. So when I scanned through the list, I didn't see it. That gave me a little bit of this kind of motivation to say, like, why not? Like, we are equally strong. like
Yeah.
and I didn't understand why there would not be many women from those countries, some countries that have never been have done Badwater. So combine that two gave me a very strong kind of why around why I needed to do Badwater. Right, it's important to have a reason that keeps you motivated, especially for big races like that. Then as I researched, I learned that I needed to do 300 miles. That was just a basic minimum qualification criteria to even send an application. And I hadn't done 300, so I knew now. This was like August of last year. I had such a strong desire to do this race that I remember calling Chris and saying, I need to do this next year. And he almost laughed at me. It's like, nobody just says that you're going to do Badwater next year and you do it. It's, first of all, it's not possible due to the qualification criteria. And secondly, there's a lot of work that's involved in training for something like
So
that.
quick thing. So you said 300 miles. So what exactly 300 miles, like in a
Yeah.
month or something? Yeah.
No, so
Yeah.
no, in a year, 12 months
Oh,
really.
okay.
So
Okay.
I no, let me correct. I think
Hmm.
three total overall, but one of them had to be in the last 12 months. That was a
Okay.
criteria back then. It has changed since then, by the
Okay.
way.
Hmm.
So when I looked at my resume, although I had been doing longer distance for pleasure, I just didn't. I was never a race person. I never believed, although I had done few ultras, I didn't. I'm not the person who just wants to sign up for races. I can do probably a marathon every weekend and not have done any marathon for a year. Like a race.
Yeah.
So I tried convincing him that I'm totally capable of this, and I run longer distance, and I am kind of do it. I knew I could do it, but a process is a process. So I had to check the box and get 300 milers under my belt. Since most of the races had closed by then, the only three I could find was, I think, Miami 100 was open. Brazil 135 was open, and then there was one more in Southern California, Rio del Gallo. So I looked up those. They were almost like a month apart. Like I remember November, January, February, yes, something like that, December and January. Signed up for three immediately because I just had this strong desire to run Badwater next year. And I remember sending an email to Chris Kosman saying, "Oh, I signed up for three, so I think I'm on a track for applying for next year." And he couldn't believe what I did. He's like, "This is like, I, I hope you know what you're doing. Like, how you're gonna run 300 miles in almost 3 or 4 months
Yeah.
span." And I was just very, committed and maybe a little naive, to do that. But honestly, that's why I believe that you just don't know until you try something. I ended up doing Miami 100 as my first kind of 100 as a part of the application process. And the feeling I went with in Miami wasn't again to win. I didn't had any target in mind. I wanted to have fun. I wanted to learn how to run a hot race because Miami is equally hot, more humid though. So I like that. I could use that as an experience before I go and run Badwater. And thirdly, I thought there were some really strong athletes running that race. I checked the roster and I'm like, wow, what a great experience to be running along them. And the only thing I remember is saying, I'm gonna put everything I got because I need to prove that even though I have not done so many 100 milers like other Badwater applicants, whatever I do, I do my best, So that's the only thing I could do with very limited, time I had. And I surprised myself when I reached the finish line, and the race director Lewis said, "Oh, you're the first person to cross the finish line amongst men and women." I'm like, really? Like,
Wow.
I didn't believe it first, but
That's so amazing.
and then I waited, and I think the next person didn't even come for another hour. And then I remember just leaving. It's like, okay, I'm feeling sleepy. I'm gonna go sleep. And the next day, when I looked at the website, obviously, they had announced me as an overall winner. So I think I remember that feeling, and that gave me confidence. So my next two races, just to really quickly go, was Rio del Gallo in California, and then I went to Brazil in January, just because I needed three races under my belt. And yeah, I ended up winning Brazil also as an in the overall woman category, and was very close to actually course record. So that gave me a confidence, and throughout all these races, again, my takeaway was, if you're happy and you're enjoying and you're not, I think you said something about the process. I would add,
Yeah.
not only you follow process, which means you're consistently getting mileage and doing strength training and whatnot, but I would say have fun along the way, right? So to me, the feeling that I is what I remember from these races is talking to people, just laughing, like having a lot of good food, and getting to know people, and that just something I crave for every race. So yeah, I had a lot of fun, and I ended up winning some of those races. So that made me a strong applicant then for Badwater, which ultimately allowed me to get in this year.
That's amazing. So yeah, I mean, I think that shows, as you mentioned, that yeah, you just have to keep on testing your limits and try things because you never know. There's always a 50-50% of win or lose, but
Yes.
people always try to take the other side of the 50% that you might lose and give away that 50% of with the winning chances. So yeah, I mean, I think most of these stories are just like that. People always take chances, and in these few 50% winning, I would say criteria, they will try to get their experiences which prolong in their life in terms of getting more and more insights and wisdom and excel in their career, and more importantly the fulfillment what they get, because again, not every success is joyful, but the fulfillment is something which is more important.
Absolutely.
So so you did that. I think eventually he agreed, and then you get into Badwater. So a quick thing about like how exactly that teamwork happens, because obviously You get into the Badwater, and it requires in one of your articles, you also mentioned that the teamwork is very much important.
Yes.
It's not about running you, but the team along with that. So would you like to kind of give spend some few lines on the teamwork and the overall experience?
Yeah, so so a little bit about Badwater, because
Hmm.
it's an unaided race, which means there are no aid station, no water, no food supplied by the race.
Hmm.
You have to have a team that carries not only your stuff, like in terms of water, ice, nutrition, but it also is a very extreme hot conditions. So what's important is that you have to stay cool throughout this race to continue even moving your body, which means you have to have access to ice to keep your body under control. So that meant you needed a very strong team that can support you. And I, again, I'm lucky to have found people along this my running journey that really believed in me. I run in my local community here in Thousand Oaks, and some of my friends who run with me have seen me running. They accompanied me to Brazil, surprisingly, at a very last minute when I was going to Brazil with one of my friends. People kept saying, "Hey, I want to join you in Brazil. I want to see like how you run and want to support you." So I ended up we going like 5 people, and this was all like very last minute, like no planning. We jumped in. Everyone kept jumping and I kept saying, "Sure, let's go. It's like a vacation." We had a blast time. So when I knew that it was time for me to select my Badwater crew, first thing I did was I looked at that my local running community, and especially the people who had accompanied me to Brazil, because now they had seen me running. So we had kind of learned a lot about each other. So it was a very, I guess, a safe decision for me to take someone to be my crew who knows me and I know them. So three of those people who had accompanied me to Brazil was also part of my crew in Badwater. And then I had, one of the person here in San Francisco who wants to run Badwater next year. And that's a part of the Badwater community culture, where you have one person in the crew who you add, who is someone who is aspiring to be an ultra runner. Doesn't have to be, but she was a strong triathlete. So obviously, I learned a lot from her. So I had 4 people supporting me. Each one of them very strong, and something they brought was very unique. So I would say, very diverse team, which I believed not only in my hobbies but in my business too, right? I believe in building those diverse team, and yeah, each one of them were very committed to towards my success, which is really a very intriguing part about these ultras. Is your team has to be equally invested in your success as you are, and I'm fortunate to find those 4 people who were crazy enough to sign up for this, and join me, and I couldn't have done this without them.
Absolutely. That's I think that shows, as you mentioned, that when you first of all you have to reach out and find your tribe and the people who believe in or maybe having those experiences. And as you can see that you approach one person, that person maybe gives some other referrals, and that's how you can build a team in that perspective. And then eventually and I didn't know that there's no aid station or something, so which itself is a big thing, because that I think really requires a lot of coordination and understanding each other. And specifically, you have to understand yourself that around what time you might need more nutritions or water or anything like that. So that's a great way. So as we go towards the tapering end, and by the way, I just lost your video there, so we still
Yeah.
have the audio. So
So I
that's
was going to say that, do you want to pause and let me see if I can fix this? Will you be
yes.
able to edit?
I don't know. I can pause, but definitely I can edit that later on. So if you can try to connect again.
I don't know why it happened. Is it recording? Because it's still giving me that message. Do you think we are okay?
Let's go ahead then. Even if it's audio, then that's perfectly fine. If it's not working, if it shows recording, then it should be okay.
I'm
We will see. Yeah. I mean, we already have audio, so which is good, I think, in that
Or worst
perspective.
case, I can just put a. How about if I put a video on my cell phone?
Yes, I mean, you can. If you already are recording the audio, yes. Okay. I think that it would be much better. Yes. Okay. So coming back to the conversation. So as I mentioned, that definitely the teamwork is something, it takes a village for the success, and that's what it shows. Now, as we go towards the end of our conversation, few things. First question is, what's next? Now you have already got into and excel the toughest race. What's next to that?
That's a tough question because I don't know what's next. I would say, many people have. I've been lucky again to have some race director call me and kind of invite me to their races. So I think that is really humbling, but also I believe I'm gonna try some of those races which I've been invited to run. I haven't decided though anything yet. I think the next part for me is, and the reason I'm taking time to think through it is because I want to really pick something that pushes me out of my comfort zone. And I don't know yet what that is. So I will let you know once I decide. But it could be mountaineering more than running. It could be something doing completely different, or it could be going longer distance than 100. I'm still debating like which one would be a good challenge for me. I will say I'm not the one who will just continue to run races for the race's sake because as I said, I don't find a lot of pleasure in just hitting the podium or just running the races. I like the challenge. I like the discomfort, and I like when someone says, "Oh, you can't do that," and then it pushes me to say, "Okay, let me give it all I got and see if I can or not." So I think we'll see what comes along, and hopefully I'll sign up for something very soon.
Exactly. And I think I love that approach is not just for the sake of it, because that's what you are continuously doing, finding a purpose and trying to always come out of your comfort zone. And that's what you're doing. If the byproduct is you're winning the races, be it. But I think, and that's why I started in the introduction based on your conversations before and the articles that is one thing which you are truly seeking is the fulfillment and purpose, and obviously out of your comfort zone. That being said, one last question about people who are not only in running, but overall in life situations, they want to come out of their comfort zone physically, mentally. What's your advice? Because definitely there are a lot of people who would be reaching out to you. How do you do that? So, in as less words as possible, what do you advise people to in all those kind of questions?
Yeah, I think a couple of takeaways I've had
Hmm.
based on my experiences that I can share. One
Yeah.
is, nothing is impossible. That's kind of is, if I had to describe my takeaway, you know, I would have never thought a few years ago, even 3 years ago, that I would have run Badwater and run almost at a pace I ran. But it's really intriguing to me once you set your goal or you said I'm gonna do it, how your body can actually support. It's like mind over your body, as they say, right? Your
Yes.
once your mind is made up, your body will support it. But you have to make up your mind and you have to stay true to it. So I would say that to me is the biggest learning I've had is a lot of that is mental. And then it also I don't want to dismiss the rigor and the discipline and the work effort that goes into achieving that goal. And so my second advice would be once you establish goal, hold yourself accountable because you're not running for anyone else. At least I don't run for to show anyone. I don't run to get any medals, but I do have my own self looking to myself every time I look at mirror and saying, okay, you said you were going to do it. Have you done everything possible to meet your goal? And if the answer is no, I won't feel good, right?
Mm.
So for me, that discipline of executing your plan and doing what it takes to meet your own goals is really important. So I would say, yeah, I think anything is possible. But once you establish your goal, make sure you are putting every effort to meet that goal
That's so great. So
and
nothing
have
is.
that's
Sorry, go
important.
ahead. Go ahead.
I was then have fun along this
Have
journey.
fun. Yes, exactly. Enjoy the process. As you mentioned, nothing is impossible, and try to kind of go with the attitude of achieving something which is like fulfills your life. As you mentioned, not going with, like as you mentioned, from your perspective, not medals or something, but it just like it helps you to achieve something, because that definitely spills over the other decisions and other aspects of your life as well. So I think this 1 hour was very much enlightening for me, and I'm very sure that a lot of people who would listen to it get the perspective, because that's what the philosophy of our podcast is: not giving solutions, but give them a way to think and go towards their decisions in their life. That being said, Sonia, one thing which really popped into my mind is I think you should write a book in future. Or if you are already contemplating, I would strongly encourage and keep doing. If you are not, then this is one thing I would definitely say, because you have those experience, unique experience, which not everyone has. And as you mentioned, as the Asian Indian, I mean, you definitely have a lot more perspective and encourage a lot of other women and obviously men as well to pursue and come out of your comfort zone. So, so that being said, Sonia, Ahuja, thank you so much again for providing the guidance. I wish you all the best for your future endeavors. Keep inspiring us. Already, I know you in our group, and we always take a lot of proud what you are doing. And I would just try that people who are listening and viewing, please share this to your loved ones, to the known people, if they think that definitely that creates a way of a thought process for the people to achieve something valuable, or I would say invaluable in their life as well. So, Sonia, thank you again so much for gracing our show.
Thanks, Saurabh, again for having me, and thank you so much to the entire running community. I felt the love and support from each one of you, so I cannot tell you I how much I admire that and how much I really am thankful for that. So thanks, Saurabh, again, and hope we'll talk again soon.
Definitely. Thanks.